A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in the library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Tell Miss Fairfax to come here. Mr. Worthing should be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it's so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. I can tell we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say.
How nice of you to like me after we've known each other for such a comparatively short time. Won't you sit down?
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I should hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity of my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. That is, I think, quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So do you mind at my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all. I am very fond of being looked at.
You're here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations. My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, have the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. He never mentioned to me he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I feel bound to state, now that I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I wish you were just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I think whenever anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were full 42, and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the most noble possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
Pardon me, Gwendolyn, but did you say Ernest?
Yes?
But it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It's his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never told me he had a brother.
I'm afraid they have not been on good terms for a long while.
That accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious, and it would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
There's no reason why I should make it a secret to you, Gwendolyn. Our little county newspaper will be chronicling the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
I'm so sorry. I feel there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear on the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is very strange, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, Pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry if it is any disappointment, my dear Cecily, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, Gwendolyn, if it would cause you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If Ernest has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my poor boy must have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it once we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing a shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here, as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in this vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, from the top of one of those hills, one can quite see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in London?
Quite a well-kept garden, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, yes, there are many flowers here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I can't see how anyone manages to exist in the country, if anyone who is anyone does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, so this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression. I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it at present. It's almost an epidemic amongst them, so I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar's not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand this to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt there are many other calls of similar character to make in this neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Dear Gwendolyn.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to that young lady?
To dear Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some mistake. The man whose arm is round your waist at present is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. Let me ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what, young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn, I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight air, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Is your name Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Are you really called John?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name most certainly is John. It has been for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily!
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. I have never been reduced to such a position in all of my life, and am quite inexperienced. However, I will tell you quite candidly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all, and I do not have the smallest intention of ever having a brother in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow us in there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbring, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is.
We have no right to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury wherever one pleases. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any enjoyment in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What you're serious about, I can't even begin to imagine. Everything, I should suppose. You have such a trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I get from the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. He won't be able to come down to the country quite so often as he used to, and that is a very good thing.
Your brother is a little off color, isn't he, Jack? You won't be able to come up to town quite so often as your wicked custom was, and not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I say it's perfectly shameful of you taking in a sweet, innocent girl like that, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no defense, Jack, for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced girl like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to her. I love her.
I merely wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, there's certainly no chance of you ever being with Miss Cardew.
I don't see much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
That is no business of yours.
If it were my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only men like stockbrokers do that, and then only at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins, and when we're in such horrible crisis, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. When one is eating muffins, one must always eat them quite calmly. It's the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. In fact, when I'm in very great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything but food and drink. Right now, I'm eating because I am unhappy. And besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there's no reason you should eat them in that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake instead.
Good
I
heavens.
don't like tea cake.
I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless eating muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you. Under the circumstances, that is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
I wish to goodness you would just go.
I certainly won't go without having my dinner first. I never go without my dinner. It's absurd. No one ever does but vegetarians and people like that. And besides, I have a very important engagement with Dr. Chasuble, to be christened under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up this nonsense, the better. I have made an appointment myself this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be named Earnest. It is absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence of my ever having been christened. I think it extremely improbable that I never was. So does Dr. Chasuble. It is very different in your case, however. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
But you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not quite sure about your ever having been christened, I think it is quite dangerous you're venturing on it now. You can't have forgotten that someone very close to you was very nearly carried off this week by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is making such wonderful improvements to things.
Well, that is nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth do you serve it to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality.
I've already told you I don't want you here. Why don't you just go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there's still one muffin left.
Close into the house at once, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us! What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly, it is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, there's just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory answer, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what possible explanation can you give me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you may have many opportunities of coming to town to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanation seems satisfactory to me, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. No.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all?
Why,
We're
going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Darling.
No.
Good heavens!
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you must clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
But I'm engaged to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, no. No. Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is quite dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I had no idea that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean that Bunbury was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiries would not be out of the question. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square Southwest, Gaves Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fiefshire, NB.
That is not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof do I have of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Her family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby? A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both the German and English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see, though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Come, Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, 'tis a mere 130,000 pounds in the funds. That is all. Good day, Lady Bracknell.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 pounds? And in the funds? Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any of the really solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces really marvelous results in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, dear. No. The side view is what I want. Yes, quite what I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The two weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on how the chin is worn. They are worn rather high just at present. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl I know, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Of course you know, my dear, that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I do not approve of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I find is never advisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you, but this engagement is completely out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's ward, guardian, and until I give my consent, she cannot be married. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously, eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more does one desire?
It pains me to speak frankly with you, Lady Bracknell, but I don't totally trust his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he had obtained admission into my home under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Pierre Brut 89, wine I was especially reserving for myself. Continuing in his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. Subsequently, he stayed for tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he knew from the first that I had no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I do not intend to have a brother of any kind. I told him so myself, yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is extremely generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unaltered. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, dear. How old are you?
Well, I really am only 18, but I do always admit to 21 at evening parties.
You are quite right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it cannot be long before you are of age and free from the restraint of tutelage. So I cannot see how your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again. But according to the terms of Miss Cardew's grandfather's will, she has not come legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me a very grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has remained 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at the present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt instinctively so. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all any of us have to look forward to.
That is not a destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, may choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more would expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I do not approve of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew that that was the way you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I think that, as things now stand, it would not be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views which I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I've just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you a moment. This matter may be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been, for the last 3 years, Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, Canon. I have been waiting there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism, come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 29 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of that day you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I'd intended to place a work of fiction that I'd written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and put the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit this handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this matter is of no small importance to me. I insist you tell me, where did you leave this handbag?
I left it in the cloakroom in one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
I must retire to the house for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suggest, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is unpleasant. It sounds as though he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish you would arrive at some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Think carefully before you speak. The lives of more than one depend upon your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury received during the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Here's the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred near Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten in an extravagant mood I'd had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am grateful to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than this handbag. I was the infant placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Worthing! I am unmarried!
Unmarried? I do not deny. That is a serious blow. But after all, who are we to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Why should there be one law for a man, another for a woman? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. That is the woman who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly inform me of who I am?
I am afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? that I have a brother. I always said I had a brother. I always knew I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you scoundrel. That treat me with more respect in the future. You've never treated me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. Though I must say I was rather out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
I had quite forgotten the matter. Your decision on the subject is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had best be cleared up at once. Lady Bracknell, a moment. At the time of my being lost, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I have been christened. It is settled. But what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I do not at present recall the general's Christian name. I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but that was only in later years, and the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and things of that sort.
Algy, surely you remember your own father's Christian name.
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear on the army list of the period, would they not?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The military lists of the last 40 years are here. Those delightful volumes should have been my constant study. Merriman, fetch the volume from the library. Let's see. M. Malum. Magsby. Maxbum. Oh, what ghastly Christian names they have. Mark B. Mobbs. Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain. Lieutenant Colonel. Colonel. General, 1869. Christian names. Earnest. John. Gwendolyn, I always told you my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is truly Earnest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for someone to find he's been speaking nothing but the truth his entire life. Will you forgive me?
I will, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.